Hey guys, welcome back to a new video. In this video, I'll share with you the code for a React Native application that you can use for your own projects. So the link to the repository will be down in the description. So let me get started and say you what features I'm going to share in this app. So we will have login and authentication from Firebase. So we will register a new user and then log them in using their email and password. So once we have the user logged in and authenticated to our Firebase backend, we will use Firestore and perform some CRUD operations. So CRUD is create, read, update and delete. So we'll see how we can do all those things using Firestore. We'll also be using Redux in this application for state management. So I'll explain you briefly how Redux works and why we need Redux and exactly what problems Redux solves for us in this React Native app. I'm going to be using Firebase version 9. So there are some changes compared to Firebase version 8 or the previous versions of Firebase. I encourage you to go through their documentation and read. But I'll give you a brief rundown of all the new things that the Firebase library has to provide us. So without wasting any more time, guys, let's jump in. If you are not sure how to set up your React Native environment, I have already done a video on that. You can find on the cards above, or I'll link it down in the description. You can find plenty of videos on how you can set up React Native. So you need to install Android Studio, you need to set up your Java environment, you need to set up all the paths if you're using Windows. Make sure you go to your environment variables and set up the paths. If you're using a Linux or Mac system, a Unix-based system, make sure you set up your Bash profile or your ZSHRC profile. Okay. So once you have done that and you have set up the environment to run a React Native project, you can just clone this repository. So I'll just show you the repo on GitHub. So here it is. You can copy the link from here and just create a folder wherever. So I'll just create let's say here's a folder called CRUD, and we'll just write git clone and then the link of the repository, and it'll clone the entire repository for you here. Once you have the repository clone, make sure that you are inside the root directory. So that's where you have the package.json. So make sure that when you open VS Code or whichever IDE you're using, in the root directory where the Android folder is there, the iOS folder is there. Okay, so once you're here, all you need to do is first install all the dependencies that we have listed here. So you can see we have Firebase, we have the React navigation things. Apart from that, we have Redux. Okay, so I'll give you a brief about all of these things. So once you have the repository cloned in your system and you have opened it up in your IDE, just make sure you run yarn to get your node modules folders and install all the dependencies and everything. So once you have done that, you can simply run React Native, run Android to run the app on your emulator or connected devices. You can check if your devices are running by just going to your terminal and typing in ADB devices, and it will show you all the emulators or devices that you have attached which are presently running in your system. Okay, so while we wait for this to build up, let me show you the setup that you need for your Firebase. So how do you connect your Firebase? So you go to your Firebase console, and I have already created the project, but you just need to have to create a new project here. So we will call this test CRUD application because this is a CRUD application. So you can select some default settings for these things. Let's just wait until the build is complete here. So yeah, our build is complete here, and we have the app running. So this is our Metro bundle. Let's just walk through the basic flow of the app. So you have the login screen. If you don't already have an account, you need to go to the register screen and you need to enter an email and password. Okay, and you need to click on sign up. Once you do that, you are registered as a new user in your Firebase. Since I have already created an account, I'll go to login. And I'll just enter. So here we have already completed the app. So let's continue with the Firebase integration while we will come back and look at the flow again for the app. So the Firebase, you don't really have to do anything. Once you have created the project, just go to the web section, give a nickname for your project, register app, and here you just need to get your own API keys and your own configuration, the Firebase config, and make sure to add that in the config section. So just copy this part Okay, this is the config which contains your API keys and your project IDs and all your settings. Because we already have Firebase installed, here you can see, and you'll get it once you do the yarn. So you just need to make sure that you copy this, and if you look at the structure of our project, we have the SRC folder, and inside this we have the entire logic for the app. So inside this you can find this config, and here is the Firebase config. And here you just need to replace this with your configurations. Okay, so this is my configuration. This is not going to work for you, and I'm probably going to delete this configuration after this video. But yeah, so this is you need to make sure that you replace your configuration. Once you do that, you will notice that we are using the get auth from Firebase auth. We are using get firestore from firestore, and we are using get storage. So this is if you want to upload, let's say, images. If that's something you want to do, you can use the firestore, the get storage method. Okay, so that's about it for the Firebase setup. So here the difference between the previous version, so you can go and read about the documentation here. So the Firebase version 9 is actually recommended now. It also supports tree shaking, so you can read more about it. But yeah, there are some differences. You can come to the documentation and you can see the differences between version 9 and version 8 or the previous versions. And yeah, that will clear things up for you more. There are some differences in how you initialize the app. Once you have Firebase set up, let's now look at the React setup that we have. So we have already looked at our folder structure here, right? So we have the SRC folder, and inside it we have all the entire app, the JavaScript files are all inside here. Okay, so we have screens, we have the Redux, we have navigation, we have configuration, we have the components and the assets, all inside the SRC folder. So first of all, this is the root of your project, the index.js, which lies in the root of your project. You can see that we are calling the app from here. So if you go here, you can see that we're using Redux. We are importing store and provider from the React Redux package, which we have installed. And we are just wrapping our entire app with this provider. So what Redux allows us to do, basically, Redux is a state management library, right? So you know how we pass props from one component to another in React, right? So if you have to pass some data from one component to another, we pass it through props. But there are some limitations when we use props, because first of all, you can only pass data from parent to child. You cannot pass props back from child to the parent. You cannot pass props between same level components. So these are some of the issues when we are working with props. Yeah, there are some ways to also pass back data from components that are acting as child components, but yeah, that requires you to do a lot of tweaking here and there. It's usually not recommended as well. So what Redux allows us to do is it provides us a global store, right? You can think of Redux as a global bucket where you have all your different variables and they have their different values, and all your components have access to that bucket. So they can read values from that bucket, and they can even update the values in that bucket. Okay, so we know how React work is. We have this special state variables which, when changes, React automatically updates the relevant DOM node, right? So that holds true even for the states that we have in Redux. So if any of the variable changes or the value is updated in the Redux, it also reflects, React automatically re-renders those components which depend on that value. To be able to do that, what we do is we have this one provider which we wrap our entire app with. So since this is on the top level now everything that is under this will have access to the store, right? So our entire app actually lives within this app navigator. So if we go to the app navigator, we can see that here we are simply checking if the user token response registered is true, then we are setting this value to be true, else it's false. And here is a simple check which checks if this is true, we show the main stack, else we show the auth stack, right? So this value, this user is coming from Redux. So you can see we are using the use selector hook of the React Redux package, which gives us simple, easy to use hooks like we have with React, like use state and use effect. So here these are called use selectors and use dispatch. So basically just think of use selector as reading the value from the store, from the Redux store, and use dispatch to when you want to write values to the store, or when you want to dispatch an action which will ultimately perform some kind of modification on the store. So yeah, so we just read the value of the store, and we, based on that, we either show the main stack or the auth stack. So what's the main stack and what is the auth stack? So let's go to the auth stack first. So you can see it just has two screens. So here in our app, we have two screens. We can either go to the registration screen, so that's the sign up, or we can, if we already have registered, we have the sign in screen. So that's it. I had another screen here, but we're not going to need that anymore, right? What are the main stack? In the main stack, we have a bottom tab and another screen, which will be the edit profile screen. Once you have done that setup done, you can go to your Firebase console, and we will log in and see basically the flow. But before we can do that, you need to remember to do two things. First of all, go to the authentication section and make sure that you enable authentication. So just click on get started and make sure that you enable email and password authentication. Just check on this box and click save, and that will make sure that you have enabled your authentication for your app, and your users basically will be able to sign in. You can see your users here. Other than that, since we are using Firestore as well, so make sure that you go to your Firestore database. You just create a database. You can do it in production mode. That's fine. This is just for testing purposes. Create next and select whatever location. So currently I'm in India, so I'll just select India, and you can click on enable. So this will set up your database inside your Firebase. So basically, once you have done that, you will so I have already created a project which I had connected. So I'll go to the project that I had already created. So this is the Firestore database. So once you have done that, all you have to do is come to your database, make sure you go to your rules and you change the rules to be able to read and write from your application. So here it will say if false. For your case, just make this true for now so that we are able to read and write, and just create a collection, or you can create a dummy collection called products, because that's what we have called our collection within our app. So once you have done that, now we can come and check the login flow here. So we can just create a new login. So you can see here, if I go under authentication, I have user called test@test.com. So I'll try to log in with that account. So just test@test.com, and the password is, I believe, just 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, and I click on login. So once I am able to log in successfully into the app, you can see that I get a list of products here. So I have my first product here, which says, yeah, subscribe please guys. You can also delete, edit products. We can add a new product, or we can log out. So we'll look at all these things one by one. So let's go to the Firestore and see, okay, we have this one product here. Let's try to add another product. Okay, so let's add a ball. Okay, let's say it's 20 and the offer price, let's say it's 10, and we'll just create on add product. So you see we have a new entry, and we have a message here that says product uploaded with success, and we have a new entry here which says ball. I have not uploaded an image, so this is null. So if we go to the home section, we see we have the ball here. We can also delete the product, so it will be deleted from here, or we can even edit the product here. So let's say it's 20, we want to make this 30, we want to make this subscribe please. Okay, and just click on update, and yeah, you can see that this one got updated as well, and similarly we have updated here as well. Okay, so you can add as many products as you want, you can delete them, edit them, and we can also log out from here and log back in, because once you log in, we need a way to get out, right? You can just keep the users in your app and not give them the option to log out. That's not going to work. Basically, I just showed you the entire flow of the app. Now I'll just walk you through the code base. So we saw the navigator, right? It's just reading the value from our Redux store. So when do we set this value, right? So the moment we click on login here, we need to set the value in the Redux, right? So we'll go to the sign in screen that we saw, and we see that we have a button called login, right? This is the button that we are referring to here, and we have this function called on login press, which simply dispatches the login user action. So we have the actions under Redux action, user actions, and we can see that there is an action called login user. So here once we click, it simply dispatches this action, guys. If you can see. So the way Redux works is you have actions and you have reducers. So you never update the values in the store directly. You dispatch actions and you use reducers to update. You can see we have actions and reducers here. So let's go to the user reducer. So basically we call these actions, like we call this function, and this function will call dispatch. So here we have dispatched another action. So every time we see the keyword dispatch, you know it's dispatching an action. So you can see it's dispatching this login. So now if you go to your reducer, you can see that for login type, what we do is we take the payload. So here we have the payload, right? Which is the response that we get from the sign in user to Firebase method. We get the payload, and basically we copy the previous state, we set the loading and error states to false, and we simply paste the data within our user data section. So initially this user data would be null. So since the user data would be null, this value will be false, and we will be within the auth stack. The moment we click on login, since this action will be dispatched, and if it's successful, like here when we entered the then, so it's successful, so we will simply call this reducer, where we'll pass the data to the user data here, and it will get the data where we can check the value for the token response registered, and it will be returned as true, and that's what we'll set here, and that's enough for us to check the logic for the flow of the login and logout, right? So yeah, it's that simple, guys. We log in and we log out. Once we log in, so let's go to the actual fun part of looking at the Firebase functions. So Firebase has made this very simple. So this time we are using use selector and use dispatch. As you can see, here we are simply displaying the products. So when we click on this edit button, we go to the next screen. When we click on this delete button, we delete the entry directly. So that's within this component called product item. You can see that we have this use dispatch, and we have imported doc and delete, and we have imported the DB from our Firebase config, and we have imported delete doc from the Firestore Lite. So this delete doc simply takes in the doc, it takes in the DB that you have configured in your Firebase config, and it takes in the name of the collection that I was referring to here. So that's the name of the collection, and the ID for the item that you want to delete. So this is the document ID, right? So this is the ID for the document. So you simply pass these three things to the delete doc, and it will delete the relevant document for you. Okay. Similarly, when we go to add product, you can see that when we click on this add product button, so that's the add products function here. So this is the add product function, which is called when we click on the product button, this add product button, this function is called. We simply check if the name, price and offer price values are empty. That's just to check if there are some empty values. If not, we simply add doc. So this is the method that the Firebase store provides us. It's the add doc. Simple as that. It takes in the collection, the DB that we have configured, the name of the collection, and the fields, the value of the fields that you want to enter, and you get those here. So this is that simple. Once we have updated the value here, we want to make sure that we call this get user products again, because if you see here, what is this get user products? It simply dispatches this get products, so it gets all the products that we have here and simply updates that to the latest products list inside our user reducer. So we have this product, so that the moment we click on the add product, we can immediately come to the home screen and see that new product here. So if we click on, if we create, let's say another product called BAT, right? And we set some random values for that and create on add product. So this entry is created now. And also, since the action is dispatched, we can come to the home screen and we can see that that is being displayed here, because if we come to the product screen, which is this screen, we can see that the flat list takes the data from products. And what is products? You can see that products is simply coming from the Redux, right? So it's being read from Redux. So once we have the latest values updated in the Redux, even from the add product screen, even this screen can get those values and be able to update the list here. So yeah, I mean, it's that simple. We can do all the basic things that we require from an app, the CRUD operations. We are able to log in, authenticate a user. Yeah, I guess you have a basic starting point to do whatever you want on the project now. So I will link the project down in the description. You can clone it. Please feel free to use the project. This is very simple, but I just wanted to share the Firebase setup with you, so that if you guys are starting to work with Firebase, you guys can have a starting point. So I hope the video was helpful. Stay tuned for more, as I'll be sharing more free projects for you guys that you guys can use in your own learning. And yeah, see ya.